So, with Arthas being sent into the Maw, let's examine some of the worst initial crimes that led him to that path, the culling of Stratholme. This really was the first monstrous act by Arthas that forced Jaina and Uther to abandon him. But how bad was it really? Was it just pure evil or a choice where you're damned whatever you do either way? So, was Arthas right to purge Stratholme? I'd like to thank RageVault for sponsoring this video. They've sent it to me about a month ago. I've used it. It is great. You can fit 12 cards on the side. You can fit cash here as well. And it is so much better in terms of space when compared to this old wallet that I've had. There are over 30 colors and styles including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. There is a lifetime warranty and a test drive for 45 days, meaning if you don't love it, you can send it back. If you go to rich.com/Doron, you can get 10% off as well as free worldwide shipping. Check out the link in the description below. Let's get some important facts out at the start. Stratholme was not a town, it was a city, a large city, and the second most populous settlement of the Kingdom of Lordran, only matched by the capital. It was a strategic position for the control of the entire area, and it was also a very busy, high-traffic region, meaning traders as well as citizens constantly went in and out. This means that it was a very hard place to contain. Additionally, Stratholme was important as it was a settlement filled with holy sites, and it was a place where the Knights of the Silver Hand formed, thus being very sacred to the Paladins. So Arthas and his forces were figuring out that the plague is really bad. It isn't just some localized problem, and having faced off his own citizens turned zombies, he realized what this could do at a larger scale. He also knew due to the shipment in Andorhol how fast this entire thing can spread, which no doubt traumatized him to an extent and created this sense of urgency that he didn't really have only like a few days earlier. Now fast forward, Arthas arrives with his soldiers, Paladins, Uther and Jaina at the gates of the city. They figure out that Stratholme has been infected, which almost immediately prompts Arthas to just decide to entirely purge the city. Uther and Jaina are completely shocked and a large portion of the army abandons him, but Arthas goes in and does what needs to be done. Now let's examine this point. This is the critical point, a crucial one, and most criticized Arthas for having made this terrible decision so quickly. Was he really right to do so? Here's the thing, Arthas had faced this before, but on a much smaller scale, and he saw how quickly people turned. He knew that they didn't have time to strategize, to think. This was like a problem right here, right now, and really, when we examine it from this point, he really didn't have the time to do so. A good argument is that later, during the siege of Dalaran, the mages of Kirin Tor had developed this system of magic that damages only the undead and doesn't affect the humans, and this would definitely help the city, but the reality is that there was really no time for this. It is likely that the mages developed this after, and the entire strategy of Ner'zhul and the Plague was literally blitz warfare, non-stop shock across all points of the front, so that the defenders can't catch a breath and they can't really think. Kel'Thuzad literally developed this network for years. He established a fake religion, he got followers in the right places and connections, so when it happened, all these fires went out and all went out at once, so that the army never really had enough time to react accordingly, to do research and to make an intelligent decision. Also, this plague is something the humans faced off for the first time ever in history. Additionally, it was also very emotional to the humans, as loved ones would turn into zombies and you would have to kill them and they would attack their own families, so this would also spark a lot of anger and justice and emotional thinking. So my opinion was that there was really nothing Arthas could do. A lot of people would say he could have quarantined the city, and there are two ways he could have gone about it, so let's also examine that. In the first scenario, they could have literally blocked the city and not allowed anyone out. This, in my opinion, would be an even worse scenario, as at least in the purge they killed them and they had a clean death, where they didn't turn into zombies, but the quarantine would guarantee that all citizens would turn into mindless scourge slaves. Sure, the citizens wouldn't be killed by their own army and their own soldiers, but they would be hacked to pieces by undead monstrosities, which is, in my opinion, an even worse situation. It isn't really a better alternative. Now, the second scenario is that they could have quarantined the place and then let select people out, but this also wasn't possible realistically because the plague was so new, it wasn't studied, they didn't know with absolute certainty what were the signs, how to test for it, so while they could have saved some lives on the other side, those survivors could turn into zombies and they could attack the army would then turn as well, and then Lordran would lose their main line of defense, and everything would just go into chaos, all of the cities would fall. So the reality is that Arthas made a hard choice and took on this terrible responsibility on himself. He definitely didn't enjoy it, and when he and his soldiers had to put an end to young and the old, the ones that weren't even defending themselves, it damn near drove him insane. Seeing as Stratholme was a very large city, if he didn't kill the people himself, all of them would turn into zombies, and at that point they could literally overrun the army, as only a portion of the forces were present at the gates of the city. It's not like the entire army was there. So if the army was overrun, then the Scourge would get even larger and Lordaeron would fall faster. Now, from the perspective of a paladin, this was an even worse scenario, because this was where the Order of the Knights of the Silver Hand was formed. Holy signs were here. This was literally the bastion of the paladin order. For this reason, Uther couldn't do anything, but I do feel like he knew it had to be done, but he just didn't have the guts to do it himself, because if he was really so much against this, he could have attempted to stop Arthas along with his paladins. He could have attacked him. So in a way, it was brave for Arthas to take on this terrible burden upon himself that would brand him as a monster in the entirety of the kingdom. When we look at this realistically from a distance, Stratholme was really a no-win scenario. It is obvious that the Scourge planned this from the start in that way, because while the city was a strategic location, it was also a test for Arthas, as he was handpicked by Ner'zhul. They forced him to break his own personality in this scenario and his own limits, and to take on this massive emotional burden. Now, with this burden, he was emotional and was dead set on revenge, and that is exactly what they wanted. As they broke his boundaries and his character, he could go even more and more crazy, and he would do anything to get revenge. His line of thinking was like, I purged an entire city of women and children, I did this terrible thing to get to Mal'Ganis, and I will do whatever it takes. Even if it gets to killing mercenaries and burning the ships, it's really nothing to what I already had done. So it was obviously a slippery slope that the Dreadlords have planted, and the Lich King that later got him to take on Frostmourne, and then with a sword, young Prince was completely lost, and now he was just an entirely different character. Ultimately, my opinion is that Arthas was right to purge the city. I'm not saying it wasn't a terrible thing to do so or monstrous, but there were really no other feasible alternatives. This entire thing was literally set by the Scourge so that the humans would have no choice. They couldn't really do anything else. However, after that, he shouldn't have fallen to emotional thinking, and he shouldn't have been so set on revenge. However, the masterminds of the Lich King were obviously well versed in humans, especially the Dreadlords, so they knew what emotions to push, they knew what buttons to push and to get the results that they wanted, which is why they set up the entire scenario in the first place. Thank you for watching. Check out top 10 strongest Death Knights by clicking on the screen, and also check out Donald's Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.